So this week we have the fulfillment of the medrash that Rashi begins the Torah with. The Torah should have begun, if the Torah is a book of laws, if that's what its purpose is, then it should have begun in this week's parsha with the first mitzvah that's given to Klal Yisrael, the mitzvah of Kiddush HaChodesh, HaChodesh Hazeh Lachem. But the Torah is not a book of laws. The Torah cannot be characterized in any pigeonhole, so to speak, and therefore we have to know about Maaseh Bereishis, and we have to know about the Ovos, and we have to know about Mitzrayim and about Yetzias Mitzrayim in order to have context. Because in order for mitzvahs to have any meaning, they have to fit into something. There has to be a context to it. It's true in general life too. Any laws that are passed, so you have the context of, so to speak, improving society or making things work better, a higher and more noble purpose than the law itself. So the Torah provided us with the context, with the Chumash Bereishis and everything that happened in the Torah until now, until this mitzvah, Chodesh Hazeh Lachem. Chodesh Hazeh Lachem introduces us to the concept of the Jewish calendar, which is a complicated matter. And the Jewish calendar was decided by the Sanhedrin, and you needed a special smicha to be able to sit on the body that decided the calendar, and the calendar could only be decided by the Sanhedrin in Eretz Yisrael. It was a special science. That's because the calendar, the Jewish calendar, is it's a hybrid.
Intercalated.
Oh, good word. You have to explain to me later what it means, but it's a lunar calendar. We count our months by the moon, and the moon is 29 and a half days from the time it waxes and wanes. Now, it's not exactly 29 and a half days. It's 5 hours, 55 minutes, and certain seconds. So we have a problem immediately. So the way the year should work and the way lunar calendars work amongst other societies is that 1 month is 29 days and 1 month is 30 days. So that the average is 29 and a half days. The only problem with that is that the lunar calendar does not in any way coincide with the solar calendar, with the sun itself. Because the solar calendar is 365 and a quarter days. It's again, not a quarter, it's 5 hours and 55 some minutes, etc. But basically that's what, so there's 11 and a quarter days between the sun and the moon. And therefore you have, for instance, the calendar that the Muslims use, which is a purely lunar calendar, or that the Chinese use, which is a purely lunar calendar, is that the months go around all the seasons of the year. Because you're missing 11 and a quarter days, and then you're missing another 11 and a quarter, and another 11 and a quarter, so now it's a month off. And then it'll be 2 months off, and 3 months off. So therefore, in the Arabs, Ramadan moves all over the year. Sometimes it's in the winter, sometimes in the summer, because it's a purely lunar calendar. However, the Torah itself places restrictions on our calendar. Certain things have to occur at certain times. So we have, for instance, the halacha that Pesach always has to fall b'chodesh Aviv, when it's springtime here in Israel. So there's a latitude, the end of March to the end of April. But it has to fall within that period of time. So therefore, if you ran a purely lunar calendar, it would move around all year. Pesach would be in December. It would be in the middle of the winter. So the calendar has to correct for that. So the way that Chazal and the Masorah from Sinai corrected that is by making what we call a leap year. In the 19-year cycle, the sun and the moon operate together in a 19-year cycle. In other words, every 19 years, they're back to the same position relative to what they were at the beginning of the 19 years. So in a 19-year cycle, 7 of the 19 years have to be 13 months. 12 of them are 12 months, and 7 of them are 13 months. When you add these months to the year, so then you are correcting the lunar calendar to coincide with the solar calendar. Now that's not exact, because it's not exactly 29 and a half days. It's not exactly 365 and a quarter days. There are problems. And for instance, in the non-Jewish calendar, in the secular calendar in the world, so in the Middle Ages, the calendar was off already because they had no adjustment. Even though they had a solar calendar, they still were off because of the fact that it's not exactly 365. And because of that, therefore, the Pope Gregory instituted a new calendar called the Gregorian calendar, in which he erased 11 days. It's like 11 days didn't happen. And started again, 1. And then he made all sorts of calculations. So he made a leap year of adding a day every 4 years to the month of February. So that instead of it being 28 days, it's 29 days. And then he made a further correction that in the millennial year, this would not happen. And he had all sorts of calculations. And that's the way it works today. Pretty much the secular calendar, it's off. And every so often, there's a proposal in the United Nations to make it the exact time. And the only way they could make it the exact time now is to forget a day, to take a day out of the week. Well, that would cause tremendous problems for us, for instance, because we count Shabbos no matter what, the 7th day, and then it wouldn't be that way. And it also causes problems for others, and therefore it never has been passed, though it is proposed every year at the United Nations, that this happen. Now, we have another correction. So that's how the non-Jewish calendar corrected itself. And that's how it operates today. The Eastern Orthodox Church still has the Julian calendar. In other words, they never corrected. So, but for instance, Choga is always 11, 12, 13 days afterwards. because they never corrected it according to the Gregorian calendar. We have another correction, aside from the fact that Pesach has to always be the Chodesh or Aviv, in the springtime. We have a correction that Rosh Hashanah lo adu. Rosh Hashanah cannot begin on a Sunday, on a Wednesday, or on a Friday. The Gemara, there are different, the Gemara Rosh Hashanah gives us different reasons for it. You cannot have 2 days in a row where burials could not take place. And other reasons to prepare for Yom, to prepare for Shabbos. So therefore, Rosh Hashanah has to always be Monday and Tuesday, or Thursday and Friday, or Shabbos and Sunday. That's how Rosh Hashanah has to fall. And because of that, therefore, you have to adjust the calendar to make it that way. How do you do that? So that we do by the fact that we have swing months. We have months that some year are 29 days, and some months are 30 days. Cheshvan and Kislev are the swing months that we can operate with, and it's calculated by playing. Either both can be 29, or both can be 30, or one can be 30 and one 29. But by playing with that, we can avoid the problem of Lo Adu Rosh Hashanah. And so the calendar is a complicated matter. And we follow a permanent calendar, which was established in the 5th century, and it's a mathematical calendar. But at the time of Chazal, the time of the Gemara, and the time of the Tanakh, the Sanhedrin operated on the basis of witnesses who witnessed the birth of the moon. But even then, all the Rishonim say they had the mathematical calendar, and if the witnesses would be way off of the mathematical one, they would hold the witnesses. They wouldn't let them testify because they didn't want that the mathematical calendar should be ruined. So we had now the Moled. This Shabbos, you heard the Gabbai announce the Moled was already. And tomorrow is a Chodesh. So we're 2 days off from the Moled. So how does that work? It works because we have to have Lo Adu Rosh Hashanah, and we have to be able to adjust it. And therefore we allow that the Moled can be when the Moled, so to speak, really is. And that's a different discussion, how we measure the Moled. There's a number of different shittas in that. But how the Moled is measured, that's one thing. How we count the days in a month, that's another thing. And because of all of these adjustments, that's why the calendar was given over by Chazal to the Sanhedrin, to the Talmidei Chachomim, and to the mathematical calculations which exist until our time. Now, our calendar is not perfect. If you're looking for perfection, it's not perfect. Everybody agrees it's not perfect. But it's good enough. And there really it would be almost impossible to make a perfect calendar. So then there is always leeway left for us to make these adjustments. Rabbi Chananya ben Akashi Omer Rotza Kodesh Baruch Hu L'Zakos Es Yisrael V'Vichal Chir B'Lohem Torah Mitzvot Shenemar Adonai Chavei Tzaman Tzidko Yagdil Torah V'Yadir.